It is almost 5 p.m., so I'm going to call the August 24th, 2021 Plymouth Village Water and Sewer District meeting to order. We'll start with approving minute meetings, from June 22nd.
I will make a motion we approve the June 22nd, 2021 meeting minutes as mailed.
I would second that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, payroll and AP manifests.
I'll make a motion we accept the payroll and AP manifests.
I would second that.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, onward to new business. Item number 1, financial overview. Brenda.
Actually, Dawn.
We can share.
Yeah.
Dawn created a template so that.
I need one.
Oh, you need one, hold on. She has one. You have one.
Jason.
What we're trying to do is, and this is a beginning point, it's a beginning, when the audit's done and when we've hopefully closed out the PS1 project, we will have more definitive numbers. These are good numbers. They're just not to the decimal point in many instances, and so we've got to sort some things out. But what I'm trying to do is get to a point where you get used to seeing the big picture financially, either monthly or quarterly. And so what this tells you, it starts kind of with the budget. Where are we? So the budget for this year combined is $2.795 million. Expended through the end of June is 1.124. So we have a balance of 1.67.
Yeah.
The estimated pre-audit, we haven't got the audit in, but when the audit comes in, we'll know what our undesignated fund balance was for the beginning of the year, in the year, and then we can kind of track it going forward and where it stands. So our current bank balance is $2.8 million. Total for budget operations, and we kind of break that down. So it's $1.2 million for water. We've expended $469,000 so far, 38%. We've got a balance of $743,000. We've billed $748,000 through this year, and we've collected $1.1 million. And I know that immediately precipitates a question.
Right. Yes. Who's donating to us?
And, well, nobody. It is, and I'm working on that now. My spread, I went crazy with it yesterday and finally realized I was focusing in the wrong way. That the money is collected this year, but some of the invoicing incurred. So we have Q4 from last year, which was being collected in Q1 this year.
Right. Yes, right.
Okay.
And so we will get that sorted out. And it gets more complex because we're operating on a cash basis, not an accrual basis.
Right.
We're managing on a cash basis, so it gets a little funky. So we're gonna do kind of a cash flow analysis that makes this more understandable. I don't know that it'll ever be totally understandable because we have invoices from pre-Q4, not a lot, but there's some of that's coming in, and so.
And that's the problem with the cash versus accrual, is that you don't have that number. That's always a flying target that's not there.
Exactly. However, when you operate on an accrual basis, it's much more difficult to figure out what's the state of the world.
I got it.
And so the bottom line of all of this is things are okay.
I was going to say, we're looking good, basically, is what this says.
Can we not close each quarter with an accounts receivable amount and just carry that and use that to back into the cash basis?
Yeah, for example, if you take the accounts receivable at the end of the year.
Right.
And add it to the two quarters of billing.
Yes.
You should be pretty close. to
Pretty
us.
darn close,
Right,
yes,
right, right, right.
I
exactly.
mean, it's gonna be a plus or a minus
Yep.
because there's other miscellaneous
Right.
billing besides the water and sewer billing.
Right.
Yes.
So, as you've heard from the expert, yes.
I like concise answers.
The, hold on a minute here, I need to get to the right day. And I'm launching so he can get the
Oh,
Stuff he
so-
needs over there?
yeah, so it's, I'm trying, I'm having trouble thinking and acting at the same time, so you should be able to connect.
This is exciting. This is the launch of the cyber ship here of communications.
Oh boy, we're getting really
Da,
fancy
da, da,
up there and
da,
down
da, da.
here and-
Participants, there you are, there's Jason. I'm going to admit you, Jason, and I'm also going to make you the Grand High Poobah.
Okay.
So,
This is not the Zoom for, what's his name? yet, is
so
it?
you're now the host. And I can go back to paying attention to what I'm supposed to be paying attention to.
All right, so as far as microphone, how is our remote person here going to be?
He enabled it.
Right, but presumably the microphone is over there, correct?
It should, we set it up the other day and it had no problem.
Oh, okay, okay, good.
So, in any event, let's stick with this overview for a minute.
Yes, please.
So, what I've done is, provide you with the status of each, kind of an overall status, the status of each group, our wages, salaries, and benefits. As of 50% of the year gone, we're 45% of the year expended, so we're okay there. Our combined billings, we've billed $1,844,000 to date. We've collected $2.6 million to date, so, we've actually collected almost as much as our total operating budgets. Again,
Right.
we're collecting more than just this fiscal year, this budget year. Our replacement reserves, as of the beginning of this year, we had 2.65 million in reserves, 977,000 for water, 1.6 for sewer. Allocated during the budget process and approved by you guys was 407,000. So we're projecting that at the end of this year, without interest earnings, we'll have 2 million in reserves. However, at that point, and when we get into the budget process, we'll have more explanation, but you all are empowered as a utility commission, you're empowered to designate undesignated fund balance into reserves,
Right.
which are then placed in the custody of the trustees of trust funds. And I met with them a couple of weeks ago, and they're well on board with kind of working together to try to do a better job of forecasting what our needs are. I'm also going to try to tie the replacement reserves to the asset value, so that, what's the ratio of reserves to the full value of the assets. The challenge is that the audit reports those assets in depreciated dollars,
Right.
which isn't helpful. I mean, it's helpful if you're a banker, I guess, or you're an accountant, but in terms of if we have to replace a sewer pump station, it's going to be not
Not
the depreciated
depreciated, right.
value, it's going to
Right.
be 100% of the value of the construction value. So that's something we've got to work on. And then the loan grant project finance package. I've been working with Becca at Ray Pierce, and she's done a really good job. It's an extensive spreadsheet that looks at all of our projects and where we stand. But the bottom line is we need to be tracking constantly what's going on with this, because we have a finite number of dollars
Right,
for projects that don't have finite construction costs.
right.
And so you will see, I mean, we're already $500,000 over the initial projected budget, which is what the grant money was based upon
Yeah.
for Pump Station 1. And so as we kind of roll along, it's important, and you'll see the spreadsheets, it's too big to print out. I'm trying to figure, I actually did a cut and paste and rolled it up, and I'm gonna work to try and find a way to we can present it on the board and or
Right.
on the screen, and that may be ultimately the way we
Right.
have to discuss it. But at the end of the day, we need to be making sure that we're not getting out ahead of ourselves in terms of making commitments either for engineering or for construction, that the last project is not consuming the
Right,
resources
the
that
resources of
we are
the,
prepared to dedicate.
Right.
And
is it
then-
done? Finished?
On the punch list items.
But there's still some disputed items that will undoubtedly have.
So what happens with grant money if you had said it was for something and you can't get to that part of the project because do we lose part of the grant money?
Well, the grant money's got to be expended, so the issue becomes front-end planning and making sure that
Right.
the rural development or DES understands. I mean, we can't build 3 feet of sewer
Right,
line.
no, right.
And so we need to be planning far enough ahead. Fortunately, you'll see here, I mean, we're at, the total of everything was almost $19 million. And we've got about 15 million in round numbers remaining. So it's not like we're up against it.
Right.
It's just,
We don't want to get into that.
Yeah,
position,
exactly.
That's
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
exactly where we want to
But
be.
We just gotta watch it.
So we could, everything could change though, because if construction costs are in fact
Going
much
down.
Construction costs are part of the problem. Available other funds, there was just a blurb that came out that said Congress has approved the $3-point-something trillion budget, and so we know that there's going to be, or we believe that there's going to be money flowing, and so the question is, where are we in the process? How does that fit in here, if at all?
Right.
And
Right.
what are our other sources of funding? So what I want you to be used to seeing this is we're going to try to get to a point where at least quarterly, preferably monthly, we're sticking this in front of you. There's backup documents to go with it, and the key one that we're going to be
that's
focusing
the
on is that last one, that
Right.
loan grants piece. Where are we? I mean, we know, as an example, that this project, by the time it closes out, it's already over by $500,000. So, part of that is the budget estimate at the front end was under the bid by, what, 250,000?
So there you go.
Yeah, so that ate up the first 250, and then, you encounter stuff. So construction isn't an easy undertaking under the best of
Well, at
circumstances.
least some of the construction costs are starting to come down a little bit, but,
Let's hope so. I mean, we'll know.
yep,
And so, when we're trying some things, we're at the very early stages of working with the town on their EDA grant. But in interviewing the engineers, both at the engineering firms that are being considered, agree that by packaging in both projects into a single construction project, there'll be savings for mobilization, there'll be savings for
which we knew.
project supervision. And so whether that's enough to offset
Right.
rises in construction costs, I'm guessing that we're going to have to find places to economize, but at the end of the day, my opinion, and I think we'll all agree, that we're at a point that it's better to know how much money we're going to be short than we are getting to the end and getting an invoice that we don't have money to cover.
Right,
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, in any event, this is the first of at least 4, and hopefully 12 that you'll be getting each year. They'll be supplemented by conversation and discussion, but the good news at this point is the numbers are all really black.
Good.
So that's the story from here.
Well, as long as we're talking about finances and we have a few seconds before we have to jump into Zoomy stuff, how has it been working with the contract with MRI?
We're struggling with transition and definitions and explanation at this point. Is
Okay.
that, I mean, everybody's working, it's just a question of what do you want us to do?
Right,
We thought we were gonna have more in-depth training today that didn't, the lines got crossed. And so, but Kim and I are, ultimately, the goal is for us to be able to fully understand the payroll and the AP process.
okay,
And so that at some point, we know what we're doing and we're learning.
okay. I thought we had a contract with MRI for MRI to be doing that stuff.
They are, but Justin came back and said the cost of the people to do it, it would be in our financial interest to shift some stuff back. We'll wind up getting a credit from them
Okay,
out of the contract, and hopefully it will be more than it cost us to do it.
as long as we all understand and are on board with the changes and
We
nobody's-
won't change anything other than learning until
Okay,
we know what's going on. So right
Right.
now, what we're
And in
doing.
the same way, yeah, we shouldn't be finding out about this at the end. We need to be
Right, we
informed.
need to know what's going on as it's happening.
I know.
Yes.
And so, you know, there's other challenges associated with that too. And until we know how much effort is involved in
right.
the processing piece.
Yeah.
Well, plus we haven't fully switched over to the
Yeah.
new system,
We're
so it
pretty
might be
clo- we're-
easier once we get there, but without knowing and, you know, without training. And making sure that
I would say
everybody can
the
still do
software
their
is
own
doing what the
jobs.
software is supposed to be doing, and it's up and running. And so the goal is once the audit is done, we're gonna know that the i's are dotted and the t's are crossed, and so then there's a couple of challenges. One is getting the procedures in place. How and where do we initiate an order? Because business transactions are happening in the lowest part of the organization. And so how does that get done properly? How do we ensure that, well, for instance, we had a accounts payable email set up when Cindy was here. And so we've now funneled that down, so the only ones who get those are Kim and I. Because one of the things that was happening is it was going to a lot of people and everybody was printing them. And so we had multiple iterations of the same invoice. And so am I going to do something with it, or you're going to do something? So a lot of it was kind of that transitional piece, and now it's a matter of saying, okay, there's a finite number of transactions, and the bigger ones wind up being purchase order anyway.
Right,
And so we have emergency stuff like the guy running his car into our pump station and having to fix that, and those don't lend itself to purchase orders. So how do we track those things? How do they get approved? Who approves them? When do they get approved? I mean, one of the things we'll be talking to you about is ultimately what you'll approve tonight, you've already approved.
right.
In
So
terms of these
can-
transactions.
Do we have to
So-
go
so-
through them one at a time? or-
Exactly, and I talked to Kim last week, and that was a couple hours to prepare that, right?
It takes quite a while
Oh, yeah,
to
to-
research all the ones and find out,
So
some
it
get
is-
deleted or.
And you're seeing it in the form of a manifest. So the question, I mean, I don't have an answer for you right now, but we know that kind of getting the procedural piece in place is going to be important. And you can't do that till you know how the system works.
Right,
And that's
right.
kind of what we're working on now.
Well, we
is
just
trying
want to make sure
understand-
everybody's got the, and,
We're sending this stuff to Brenda, and they're doing stuff with it. And
Okay.
so we're now saying, okay, show us what you're doing with it.
okay,
What do you do
Well,
with it?
that's, it's like the purchase orders. I
Yeah.
mean, I give you, when it's over the limit, And then
Right.
I send to the three of you with explanations for what
Right.
each of them are. And again, like on this list, I mean, you have already approved them.
Right,
So, I mean, other than maybe just making the motion to approve PO numbers 175 to.
through
Make it
205.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
right, we
just to,
We can do
to
that.
205 as listed in the agenda,
Yep,
then you don't
That
have
covers
to
it.
revisit all of them.
okay,
Because again, I mean, the whole email, we can set it up so that you guys can have access to that purchase order and module, and you can approve it.
Right, understood, yeah.
It
Right.
would be much more helpful if we just could print a PO list right out of
Yeah, you
MPS
can.
system rather than to
Yeah.
have to.
right, exactly, yeah,
Here and-
right.
So we're trying
Yeah.
to
So, so,
fine-tune it.
we've
So-
made a lot of strides. We've got a chart of accounts.
Yep.
We've got detail, what is in each line item. We have reliable numbers. I mean, we can go online and
Yeah.
we can have confidence that it says we've spent 43%. We can have
Yeah.
confidence that we've spent 43%.
40%, yep.
And so now.
No, I just wanted to make sure,
Yeah,
you know,
no.
that everything was going the way it, and,
It's
you know.
going that way. We're trying to understand now that we know that it's working, what happens? When you create a purchase order, what happens? What's the computer do with it? Where does it go? We
Yep.
know at the end of the day, things wind up in the vendor file, which.
But how did it get there? It's magic. Computer does it.
So you're looking for a flow chart that tells you where it goes, so you
Right,
understand
right,
it.
yeah,
because
I
the
don't
that
computer
would
does.
actually
know the flow chart, but before we can, one of the questions has been for a while, does it have to be this complicated?
Right,
Right,
And you can't answer that question unless you
unless you know where it's going.
I mean, I can tell you that it's complicated.
Yep.
The question is, are we overcomplicating it? Do we have more steps, like printing all this stuff out and then having you review it again?
right,
When you've already reviewed it
Reviewed
and
it.
you've approved it.
Right.
And so there are those kinds of steps, and, you know, part of it is just paper flow.
right. I mean,
But
I
getting
know
our
that if I
heads-
ever have questions, I ask them,
Yeah.
but most of the time Brenda's been really good about saying what it's for, why we're doing it, so.
Right, and
You know.
I always attach the worksheets,
Right.
which are printed out
Right.
of the purchase order system,
Yep.
so that, and I don't issue those purchase orders until I have emails back from the three of you saying
Right.
approved.
Okay.
And I mean, I know, Chris, you've asked a couple of questions, and
Yep,
I sent you back the
yeah, well, I have to, you know,
I mean, what we have a high degree of confidence in, that nobody's getting paid, nobody's getting money if they don't deserve it. I mean,
Right.
So now the question becomes the kind of the process and the procedure, and what do we want to maintain in paper form? I like paper. That some others don't like paper as much, and so what do we want to retain in paper? What do we want to scan and include in the electronic documents? And you know, and then what do we do with stuff? I mean, none of us on this end are accounting or accounts payable process people, and so what do I do with this shipping paper? What do I do with this statement? What do I do with this invoice? And you know, we stumble on stuff. We've got one vendor who provides information on both sides of the invoice, which, you know,
Right.
all of a sudden it's confusing, and so there are those kinds of issues. There's just the flow process. An invoice comes in. What do we do with it? And up to this point, one of the big issues that we've gotten under control is that it's not going to 5 different places, because that was, you know, causing all kinds of consternation in terms of, geez, didn't I just see that?
yep,
Didn't I approve that last
last
Thursday?
week.
And
Yeah.
so I think that we're seeing a light, and I think it's the end of the tunnel.
Okay, so while we're talking about these lovely purchase recs, did we get insurance information for the guy who hit the pump station?
Well, you should ask. We got correspondence from the Attorney General's office. Was it District Attorney General?
Yes, we don't have the official police report, but or getting that in the next day or two, but what I'm told is he does not have insurance.
Of course, we love the insurance optional states.
Primex is covering all but $1,000 of it, so we will get a check shortly for $6,700
Yeah.
to update. And then Primex, I believe, will go after.
Right.
him.
Okay,
So I have forwarded the note that we got from the attorney,
Okay.
the county attorney, to Primex. I haven't heard back from her today, it just came today.
yep, okay.
And we'll see.
All right.
I think, you know, she did tell me yesterday they go after our $1,000 deductible.
Oh, nice, okay.
Yeah, but she says it could be very long.
Right, of
Yes,
course,
I mean,
yeah.
especially not being insured, so, okay.
Yep.
Thank you, that was the first
That was the
question on my
Question on your
list.
list, there we
Yes.
go, one down.
One down, yeah.
I have a question. Who marries these things together?
What things?
Well, okay, we print out a purchase order. We buy it, comes in, who marries the invoice with the purchase order?
That's,
That's
right
random.
now, it's she and me and he. That's one of the things,
That's
that's
one of
one
the
of the
problems.
processes we're trying to put in. What's the flow?
Right,
So we're trying to ensure that every invoice
That's what
comes
Cindy
here.
did.
yep,
Yeah, every
So-
invoice
Wow.
comes here. There's a role, you know, and again, it's simple until you start doing it, and then you find out that, you know, their transactions happen in different ways. Somebody goes into Rand's Hardware and they get a nut and a bolt for something, they get a little receipt. Rand sends us a statement and an invoice, or a statement with all of the little copies
Receipts.
of all the little slips on the back. Got to get those slips and match them to what's on
yeah,
the
check it out,
Rand's
make
on the-
sure.
on the
Yeah,
back,
and
but- yes.
the reasoning behind all of that too is because there have been times with Irving, with Rand's, with Agway, that the town of Plymouth gets put on our statement.
Oh, yeah, that's not good.
So,
Well,
I
they
wonder
like
if
it.
it happens the other way around
Right,
too. We
right.
get put on their statement by
We
accident?
like that more.
yeah.
Yes, I'm sure we
We like
do.
But again, that's the reasoning
Right,
behind
okay.
having
Right.
those slips and
Yep,
matching them with
yep.
statements. Because we've had, Irving was one of them, that we had a charge for gas on a vehicle that
It's our vehicle,
wasn't
right,
our vehicle.
got it.
And so we're dealing with some of that kind of stuff, which if you're a water operator, you know, you put slip in your
Right.
pocket and, you know.
And the
you
uniform
take it out
goes
the
in the washer.
Yeah, and so, but that's not their world. They needed the bolt to
Right.
fix the broken whatever.
Right.
Right.
And so that's what they do. And so what we're trying to do is figure out is how can we create a process that's relatively smooth? We don't have a bazillion transactions, so
Yep.
but I haven't been able to answer the question that several people have asked me, does it have to be this complicated? I don't know. And so the first thing we're doing is learning. And part of Brenda's challenge and Carrie's challenge is teaching me, is I'm a paper guy. And so, you know, open your computer and go to here. No,
Yes.
give me a piece of paper. I like seeing it in a piece of paper. I can put this piece of paper next to that piece of paper and I can connect the dots. So,
Okay.
we'll get through. And we're, right now, it won't get any worse. So it can only get better. And the good news, this is the good news, is that we now have reliable numbers. It took a while. I mean,
Okay.
pandemic didn't help, but,
No.
you know, we know that we're okay. Beyond looking at the checkbook every week and saying,
Yeah, look at the balance. Wow,
Yeah.
we must be in good shape.
yeah. So,
It's just about
So,
time.
sorry.
Yes, it is just about half past here, yes.
We could make a quick motion now and approve those purchase recs.
You got 2 minutes, you can do it.
Well, they already have been approved.
He's ready to go.
Oh, do we have to?
Okay, we
It's
have
just to
to,
put it in the record.
I see, yes, right.
okay,
Well,
He's
let's-
ready to go.
Yeah, let's,
we'll do the him first.
yeah, I don't think you have to read them because
No, we'll do
they're just the
170,
ones referenced.
yes.
Yep.
And
Yeah, as
and
presented in the
and have them,
agenda.
have them attached to
Okay.
the minutes.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, there we go.
Never mind.
TV volume.
Okay, great. Nice to meet you all.
Nice to hear you. So, David, thanks for taking the time to join us. Would you be kind enough to give the commissioners kind of a quick and dirty overview, a little bit about you, a little bit about what you do and who you do it for?
Mm-hmm. Yes, my name's David Savage. I'm the CEO of Oxa. We're a cybersecurity company based out of Brookline, Mass. Myself personally, I grew up in the Plymouth area. I actually still live here now, so I'm quite close. I've been in the IT industry for over 12 years, and slowly over time shifted to the cybersecurity side. I have a lot of expertise in penetration testing and white hat hacking and those kinds of things. And I've also brought that over into risk assessments and trying to secure different businesses and industries so that they can be better prepared for any sort of cybersecurity incidents and whatnot.
Peterborough, your client?
What was that?
Is Peterborough your client?
Peterborough? No.
Well, that's kind of good. Yeah, you know, that's good. We're glad that Peterborough is not your
It's a very
client.
unfortunate, common occurrence, unfortunately. Sometimes comes down to user training, sometimes comes down to technical, but there's only so much that you can do if you're not taking proactive steps. It's sort of inevitable at this point that something's going to happen.
Is what happened there something that you can help us ensure doesn't happen here?
Yeah, so I read on it briefly. It sounded like it was a business email compromise, which is a very common sort of attack where somebody's password was figured out and they got into an account. And what they do is they capture the outgoing emails and change it to a different bank account number. So when an invoice is paid, it's sent to a new account, which doesn't actually belong to the real destination. And so that's how they get away with the money, and it's really hard to get back at that point. I've seen that happen quite a few times, and it's quite unfortunate. And a lot of times, insurance doesn't want to cover it. So yeah, it can definitely hurt a lot of businesses and organizations. So for you guys, there's some common sort of controls that come into play here. One big thing is training people, right? How to recognize when something fishy is going on, right? You know, whoever was sending those emails or receiving them should have noticed that the info was different, possibly. Or maybe the correspondence didn't look quite the same. There's a lot of times there's spelling mistakes and stuff like that when there's someone sort of interjecting in these emails. Another piece is technical controls, right? We want to make sure people are using multiple factors of authentication. It's a very simple way to just, in case somebody gets your password, they still can't get into the account. You can still deny it and block them from entry. So some very basic things probably could have prevented that.
Cool.
But it's a lot of companies and organizations have nothing, honestly. It's a lot of people are sort of waking up to the realization that it's a real threat.
Right. So what happened in Peterborough would at least be itemized in your phase one assessment of things here. That would be one vector, as it were, that you would.
So phase one is it's about understanding what it is that you have. So you can't protect what you don't know you have.
Right.
So the first part is fully documenting everything, understanding all the different assets and email account systems, things like that. So once that's all documented, then we kind of step into phase two, which looks at the risk with all of those. So we're looking for any sort of known vulnerabilities, and then I'm also going to perform penetration testing, which is where I try to perform those same attacks that these bad actors are trying to do, right? So you want me to figure that out first before someone else does. And that's the whole point of it. And then part C of phase 2 is actually doing interviews and gathering data, talking to different people to get an understanding of, how's the organization running as a whole? How is it interpreting the risk and dealing with it? And actually, it's got to come from the top down, right? Everybody has to be on board. Everybody has to use all of the controls and everything that we lay out and so on. So that's all part of those 2 phases, is essentially gathering everything that you have and then understanding the risk around it. And from there, we can make an action plan of what to do moving forward.
How long does this all take?
So you have somewhat of a highly interconnected system. I mean, I would talk probably to 2 to 4 weeks, just because of the amount of devices and the different networks and whatnot that you have. It's going to take time to put this all together and gather all the data.
That's are we talking phase 1 here? Is that what you're saying for 2?
So, no, ideally that would be both phases. I'd probably go lean more towards the 4 weeks, just because of the amount of devices and whatnot.
Yes.
It all depends on people's schedules and when they can get in there and get physical access to things and all of that as well.
Right.
And I'll keep everybody up to date as we work through this process, and if there's any sort of unanticipated roadblocks.
Not a lot of travel time.
No, yeah, it's quite easy for me to get in there, right? So it's quite beneficial. Sometimes I gotta drive an hour or 2 to get to someone, so this is a lot easier.
Yeah. So
this is 6th grade, so even if it takes me more time,
That's
it's
just one
not gonna
page.
cost you guys anything more. So I'm doing all of this as a part of that rate, and it's quite comprehensive. It's going to take quite a bit of time, and I actually gave you guys a decent amount of discount just to show that I want to be partnered with you guys and get on board. This journey would cost quite a bit more.
You might point out the references you gave us, which helped us. One is you focused on SCADA, which was a big deal for us because we're dependent on it, and it's a new area. But you also do Plymouth School, right?
Correct, yes. So the SCADA department I worked with was City of Portsmouth, and I actually rebuilt their entire network, working with their SCADA manager, and also working on securing their whole environment as well. And I actually did quite a bit of work with the city itself, the Plymouth School District, other municipalities. In the past, I've worked with Milford and Amherst. And on our MSP side, we've worked with quite a few different municipalities and state government, local government, housing authorities, and so on in Massachusetts.
So, was the quote for both phase 1 and phase 2, or?
It is.
It is, okay, I wasn't, I only have one page of the printout here.
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't really do, all the other stuff without getting phase 1 done first.
Of course.
It's an all-inclusive,
Yep.
it's gonna make phase 2 easier if everything's well documented
Yes.
and in place.
Yeah. Now, I think my next question was, obviously nothing is static here. What might we expect as an ongoing cost of maintenance going forward?
Yeah, so we talked about this a little bit. So I generally do what's called a VCISO program. It's called a Virtual Chief Information Security Officer. So I essentially fill that role for you as a district. So I'm the one in charge of making sure that you're moving forward in your cybersecurity program. So at the end of phase 2, you're going to know what all of your risks are. Then what, right? So it would be on me to work with your current IT provider, work with the SCADA team, work with the business side, and so on to make sure that these risks are starting to be addressed.
Yes.
And we're gonna start at the most critical ones first, and then obviously work our way down, trying to minimize the risk
Send messages to CCS.
and deal with the most critical ones first. So that
Leases and stuff.
you know,
So it becomes-
90% of the time, it's the top 10 things that will get you. So those will be the ones that we want to take care of first.
Yes.
And it's an ongoing thing, right? It never really ends. If your environment changes or you get a new program or anything like that, that's why it's a month-to-month sort of program. And I generally dedicate a certain amount of hours per month to make sure that I'm available to answer questions, make changes to policies and procedures, update things, making sure everything's protected.
Right, and if we have hardware changes, then obviously that requires review at that point, at those points.
So you can also utilize me for, if you're making a change in the network, I can help you plan that from both an IT and security perspective.
Okay.
And making sure that it's done right from the start.
So would there be a way of, I mean, for budgeting on our part,
Right.
a way of, and we don't have to hold you to a number at this moment, but is there a way that you can say to us, hey, you're, in the next 12 months, you might incur expect X number of hours and X number of dollars?
Right, so a lot of that's gonna depend on what I find in phase one and
Okay,
phase two.
okay.
But I would say that, you're probably in the 1,500 to 2,500 a month if you did a program like that. And that would include, cyber security training and everything like that for all of the users. Any sort of licensing costs or anything like that we make for changes in the environment would obviously be additional.
Mm-hmm.
If, say, you had an incident, which can still happen, right? There's always the chance that something happens, right? So I offer 10 hours covered under that vCISO program that I'll work with you and making sure that the incident response plan is followed, all of the correct contacts are notified, and systems are isolated and so on. And if for some reason it goes beyond 10 hours, then it would incur some sort of hourly rate, which we would negotiate or determine at the time of contract.
Right.
It's an insurance policy.
Yes. What was I gonna say? Well, the district is already contracted with an IT provider. Presumably you would work with them. I mean, we may already have some security type services with them. We would be perhaps modifying things based on your recommendations.
Correct. So I'll work with other IT providers. It's certainly fine as long as they're open to suggestions and working with me and following what the best practices would be.
Right.
The other option is that I do offer the whole IT side as well, if you wanted to go that route. Or we can sort of segment it out into, who does what, right? Who's in charge of which pieces.
Right. Well, that you anticipated my question there, so thank you. That's helpful. I'm not thinking of anything else at the moment. I mean, so much of this depends on what we find.
Right? Yeah.
I'm sure what we say. Yeah.
I can certainly give you a better idea, and any sort of major projects or anything like that, we can do a scope of work, and that will define, pretty similar to this quote, what needs to be done, what all the steps are, and what the cost of that would be.
Right. So I guess one other question, staff-wise, I mean, how many people are on your team? So, I mean, as far as maintaining coverage?
So I'm backed by about 15 people.
Okay.
So whatever we need to get done, we'll get done.
Okay. I think I'm good on.
I'm good, yeah.
I'm good.
Do you want to make a decision now, or you want to defer?
I'm okay making a decision. I mean,
As far as approving I'd say we should
Yeah.
act on it, yes.
Okay. Then
okay, so
I'll make a motion that we approve the VAXA proposal that was presented to us in the amount of $10,000 to begin the phase 1 and phase 2 cybersecurity effort.
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 You're hired. See how easy that was?
See you 8 o'clock tomorrow morning?
No, I appreciate that. I'm looking forward to working with you all and Jason and whatnot. And I guess just going forward, should I be communicating with Jason for any further communication or?
Jason and Kim.
Jason and Kim?
Yep.
Okay. Perfect. All right, is there anything else that anybody?
Not at the moment, but we look forward to hearing what you have to present
Yeah.
to us.
All right, well, appreciate it. I'll wish you a good night, and I'm sure I'll be updating you at some point in the future.
Wonderful.
Thanks, David.
Thank you, David.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bye.
Send a thank you note to Peterborough.
Is Mike showing up yet?
It was the same address.
Yeah.
So that was an ACH transaction?
Yes. Yeah.
So we,
There were two pieces to it. One was for the payment to the Conval School District, and the other was to the contractor that's working on the bridge project in Peterborough.
Yikes.
Wow.
Lot of money.
Yeah.
All right, while he's playing,
Oh, yes.
I'm gonna make a motion that we accept the purchase recs
You need me to read
number
that?
175 through 205 as mailed to us and presented on the agenda for August 24th.
Right.
I would second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Done. We can do the abatement too.
Oh, yeah,
While we're
right.
waiting.
Yeah, let's, the abatement, have all of you looked at this
Yeah,
previously?
I have.
I have as well. Assuming that Kim has signed off and said that they have not previously been awarded an abatement?
Nope, first and only.
Okay. I'll make a motion that we approve the abatement presented to us. This is for Jeffrey Kapp, property owner at 4 Edmonds Court in Plymouth. Just briefly, there was a water leak in the heating system that there's a significant amount of water went by the meter there before it was discovered. So the abatement is in the amount of $4,166. Oh, $4,066.50. Yes, thank you, Chief.
I'll
So,
second that.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Silence.
Catch up with you. We'll catch up with you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for turning that stuff around too.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Brenda.
All right, let's see. This would be, oh wait.
Was it Mike? Did you hear Mike?
21. And
No, I
now
haven't
it's ready
seen
for
it.
you.
All right.
Thank you.
It'll pop up though, right?
Yeah, it should say admit, yeah.
Yeah, if you choose participants, it'll open it up on the side. And if the 3 dots on the lower right, you can get it to play a sound when someone logs in. So if you click those 3 dots, see play a sound, just check that. There you go. Now we'll know because it'll play a sound for us and we don't have to guess.
As long as
Yeah,
I'm not muted.
you are the,
No, it's just a bing.
As a signature, do they want to
Right.
authorize Jason?
Yes, you do.
Kind enough to amend your motion to approve the contract with David to authorize Jason to execute the contract since they put his name on it.
I will make a motion that we authorize Jason to execute the contract with David Savage of VAXA.
I would second that.
all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Becoming a powerful guy.
A lot of risk.
It's all on you.
Dual authorization, don't open any strange emails, check the email addresses that are coming
I do.
through.
I send them all the strange ones, and they say, oh, no, that's fine. I said, I don't know.
And don't use the password 123456 or I forgot.
It is. I'm convinced it's gonna be the undoing of the world.
Oh, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
definitely.
You know, it's just,
You're gonna talk about
See,
this?
I'm thinking that, in order to authorize anything ACH, they must have had fake information. That's what had to happen, because we have a dual method of approving anything through the bank.
Yeah, we have the forms.
Right.
It must have been somebody that didn't have.
Right, that's what I'm confused. I would like to know more.
I
It would be very hard with the way the security that Meredith does
think so.
to happen.
Especially for such a large sum. I mean, that ought to be like
Jeez,
triple checked.
Wouldn't that be a red flag right
But
there?
I
Like,
mean, my wife's the treasurer for the school district. She'll get, $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, transfer, no problem, all the time. And it just happens, and that's what they did, but they changed the account number so it went someplace else, which is scary as hell.
yeah.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, if you think about the number of, we've taken control of the AP email that comes in. So, we get the invoices
Right.
to AP, but you begin to wonder, which would be, I'd be interested to talk with him and see, would we be better off simply sending a letter to all of our vendors and saying we only accept US mail invoices?
Right.
They'll
be like, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you're going back
What
to
is that?
to the old days, but I mean, how vulnerable do we make ourselves by kind of taking these
Right.
continual steps in the name of efficiency?
right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
You guys figured out.
Well, while we're waiting, Jason, I was curious, going back through our weekly reports here, and I was curious about that high flow out at Yetton Road that you've been experiencing. I mean, is that, my question focuses in on, is there anything that costs that we're incurring or damage that we're incurring by equipment that's on, privately owned equipment that's, high flow experiencing out there?
Yeah, we are seeing times when all three pumps at the pump station turn on. So that would increase our peak demand for electric and power. We haven't had any incidents where we had a sanitary sewer overflow at this point, but the risk for that is high.
Are we getting infiltration from stormwater? Where is this coming from?
Based on our investigations, we're thinking that it may have something to do with the equalization tank up on Tenny Mountain. So we have reached out to the management company to request more information from them, and we'll keep an eye on it really at this point. So it may be that unit is malfunctioning. Yeah.
And just sending flow down without, basically non-metered flow. That's not the right word, but non-gradated flow.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the...
Yeah, if they have events up on the mountain above and beyond their typical flow, they may experience surcharges, which then translate down to us.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what does happen if we get into a situation where a pump fails, for example, on our end because it's overloaded or whatever? I mean, it seems like a problem potentially a problem waiting to happen.
Yeah, like I said, the risk is high, so that's something that with any of our stations, if we get inundated with flow above and beyond our peak design, there is the chance there for a breach of the system, and then we're facing a sanitary sewer overflow.
Right, so that's on us, the district. What recourse do we have at that point to?
Right, then we would go back to the user and identify, like I said, we need to investigate further into exactly what's causing it. We think we know where it's coming from, but why?
Right, yeah.
So we currently have reached out to the management company up there and are awaiting correspondence back.
Yeah, let's hope they get back to us. So the other thing I noticed in those weekly updates, which I have to say, as always, I greatly appreciate those.
Oh, yeah, it's so nice getting those.
Yeah. So there's a discussion of the lead service line inventory that you've been looking at. Is there any, is the lead on our side, or is this on the resident side of these connections?
And or.
And or,
The
okay.
answer is yes.
So is there potentially funding coming down? I mean, are we looking at removing the lead specifically? Or?
Yeah, part of the revised lead and copper rule that'll go into effect, I believe, next July. The district will be responsible for any lead on the public or private side of the system.
Oh,
And the removal of that lead within a certain amount of time once it's been
Wow.
identified.
On the private side too?
Yes, there's a lot of controversy with this new rule, and we are seeking funding as many of the water systems and throughout the state are seeking funding for the private side of the system.
He's here.
there should be. So I
That's
think we
that
have something
sound.
like, you've already identified something like 200 connections. Is that correct?
We have a few hundred connections that are unknown, so we need to investigate further. There's indications based on the age of the system in that area or the age of the house that's connected that may,
You still have to admit him.
We may find
Yep.
more lead.
All right, so that's a to be continued also then. All right.
Yeah, that's, I mean, that adds to the fun of, the regulations that are coming. It's a big move in Congress right now about PFAS.
Yes,
We know that manganese is.
right. It's
Yeah.
looming. Yes,
Looming,
right.
yeah.
So, I mean, at some point,
Hey, Mike.
Good afternoon.
Hello, Mike.
Hi, Mike.
Hi, Mike.
How's everybody doing today?
Good, how are you?
Doing all right?
so we're gathered here, Mike, we need, between you and Jason, a briefing on the
How bad is it?
challenge, yeah, and what did you learn from DES? I heard a little bit from Jason today, but from DES, and what's your recommendation? Just so that you know, I spoke with Donna Lane a couple of days ago, and I got to her today about the number of housing units, whether there's some CDBG emergency money available, and she's gonna check and get back to us.
Okay. Are the commissioners briefed on the situation?
Yeah, we know what happened.
Okay. All right. So, when I came to the site last week, I definitely saw a need for an emergency repair. There's a slope failure. Right away, I saw that, there's definitely going to be some wetland impacts, and I know that there are some timelines on the emergency authorization portion of the Wetlands Bureau, which effectively, under a normal project, getting a wetlands permit process can take months, 3-4 months. And it's quite the process, but under an emergency situation, they have some regulations that allow you to kind of bypass the normal permitting process, but there's timelines. So as soon as I saw it last Wednesday, by Thursday, I was making a notification to the Wetlands Bureau that this situation had occurred, that effectively met their notification requirements, even though, they have some flexibility in the notification requirements, but we notified them. The situation is urgent, and we met with them today because there's some gray areas on what may or may not be allowed under the emergency authorization. Normally, under the emergency authorization, you can reestablish and restore something as it was, so kind of matching the existing conditions. But in this particular situation, just a culvert replacement and fixing the embankment is not going to be a long-term solution for the district. We need rip-rap stabilization. We have to prevent erosion ahead of the culvert and downstream of the culvert.
as well as whatever earthen embankment gets restored, it's at a very steep slope. Normally for soils like that, the maximum allowable slope to restore with sand would be like a 1 to 3 slope, and this is 2 to 3 times that. So not only do we need riprap ahead and downstream of the culvert, but also wherever the slope is restored, just to prevent any further erosion. And that's really kind of the best solution. And so we met with them today to understand what can we do under the emergency authorization. Can we do all of that work and not raise any red flags? Or do we do the emergency work and have to follow up with a subsequent wetlands permit, or kind of an after the de facto wetlands permit, just documenting what the restoration areas were after the fact? And essentially, what they said is, within the next day or two, we need to submit a narrative plan to them, what the plan is going to be. And I think really the most critical part of that that's unanswered at that time is the timeline. Second, after we submit that, they will issue an emergency authorization permit, and from there the district is clear to authorize Tulip to perform the work, to go in there and disturb what's necessary, replace the culvert, install riprap where is needed to protect the upstream and downstream areas, as well as the final slope stabilization. Following that step, we produce a narrative report, nothing too detailed, a lot of photos and some descriptions. And from there, the department will issue a decision. Hey, you're good, you don't have to do anything else, or you have to follow up with an actual after de facto permit application. So those are really the next steps.
Has Mike with Tulip seen this? Has he been down there to take a look at it?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so he knows what's involved?
Yeah.
Okay.
So are we looking at like further mitigation later on in the process? Like
We don't
when
know
you,
yet.
we won't know. Until,
No, I wouldn't recommend that. I'd get in there and do one fix. This ravine is about 35 feet deep. So
I've seen it.
yeah,
the majority
it's
of the disturbance
Yeah,
is
you
just
could-
going to
you
be
ever put a
getting
pipe down
down to
there?
the
No idea.
bottom of the ravine.
Yeah.
Is there no alternative?
There is a longer term alternative that would take a lot more time, and it would involve evaluating a sewer rerouting.
And we had talked about that at one point as part of the pump station one whole cross country, and we opted not to do that, right?
Nope, this is not in the pump station one tributary area. This is
Oh, it's
actually
not.
one of the district's new projects that is upcoming for evaluation. It's involved with the Highland Street sewer main. So we are at the groundbreaking of just the evaluation phase of potentially looking at a new route. But you have an emergency need right now that
We gotta fix it.
and unfortunately it may be a Band-Aid, it may be a permanent fix if we end up keeping the cross-country route, but
So we wanna fix it right and make sure that it's done properly so that it isn't just a Band-Aid in case we do decide to not reroute.
correct.
Oh, yeah, it's pretty,
Is there a
It's a
Band-Aid?
horrible
I mean,
area.
is there an interim
No.
solution?
No.
The slope is already partially failing and it's made out of sand.
yeah, it's horrible.
Right now there's, in the sand failure area that's exposed, there's nothing holding that slope back, so it's, time is of the essence.
Yeah, and this has been ongoing for years,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
I mean,
we've
we've
had
all been
problems.
seeing some level of washout there for, I don't walk in there too often, but it seems like even 5 years ago, this was starting to,
I would say one of the pieces of drainage pipe appeared to have failed a while ago, and where that has broken off, all stormwater flows are trying to go around that, and that has caused the washout to the slope.
Right.
Yeah, see, we don't get, how often do we get back there to check on these
Not
things?
too often. We were notified by the school district.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that needs to be we need to go tromp out back there every once in a while.
Yeah, that whole area, there's a high risk behind the elementary
Oh,
school.
yeah, it's awful
to the
back
high
there.
school, because that's part of a larger
Yep.
slope failure
Yep.
near the elementary school.
Right.
So the risk there is ongoing,
Going.
even with this, even if it is a permanent Band-Aid in other areas of this line,
Yep.
there's still a high
Well,
risk.
that was like the pump station 4 line, how bad that was. We kept breaking because the slopes kept, failing. So, yeah. Okay. I guess we gotta do what we gotta do.
We got an estimate?
Yes,
You wanna tell us how much?
it was about 132,000.
Let's hope that's all long-term Band-Aid.
That also included replacing part of the sewer line within that area, because they'd have to remove the sewer line
Right.
in order to dig down to the culvert to replace the culvert. So
Ah,
they're
I
bypassing the sewer line as well
I
during all
see.
of that work.
Does Mike have an idea how long it'll take? Would either Mike have an idea of how long it will take?
Yeah, he was saying at least a week or two
Wow.
from start to finish. By the time you set up the bypass pumping, cutting
Yep.
the pipe and stuff.
Yeah, no,
Getting
it's-
down there, because you can't even get a machine in there at this point.
Right.
right, yeah.
Let's hope it doesn't rain for a little while.
Right, we dodged the bullet
It's
yesterday.
worked so
Yeah.
far.
Yeah. Well, I think that's probably all we need to hear now, but thank you, Mike,
Yeah,
for
for
filling us in
rushing
on, yeah.
right into it.
Yep, then we'll follow up with the DES paperwork, and then once the district decides on the timeline to authorize those repairs, and that's really kind of the last piece that's left.
Well, I think as
From
soon
a
as
funding-
as soon as we
Sure.
hear from, as soon as we hear from DES that they give, the Wetlands Bureau gives the okay for us to go, we should go, right?
They indicated it would be very quickly, they'd respond within 2 days.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, so
good.
that they want to hear from us, like Mike said, with a written narrative of the plan. And I think that's as long as we have the buy-in from everyone this evening, we can move forward with that
Go.
to DES.
Yes.
And then they
Go.
Yeah. Approved, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Do we need a motion for this thing?
Probably not.
Okay.
We can.
It's an
you're-
emergency
I
thing,
mean,
we gotta do
assuming
it.
you're gonna write it, you're authorized to write it.
Yeah, we'll draft it up, we'll pass it by yourself and Jason for, in case you have any comments. And we'll go from there.
Good.
Sounds
The,
good.
one follow-up item, Dawn, when we had first caught wind of this, we had committed to looking into potential emergency funding from rural development
Yeah.
and New Hampshire DES. Both of those sources are not gonna be a source of
Rats.
emergency funding for this type of project. We can go through more of the details as to why, but it's either not feasible time-wise, or the money's gone in the case of rural development.
Okay.
Now, I've got a call into EDA to see if any of that, the disaster funding from the 219 storm is still available. And as I said, Donna Lane is going to check with CDBG. She said they do have emergency money. She doesn't know if it's been exhausted and whether this would be eligible.
DES did indicate that FEMA was about to make a declaration on Cheshire and Sullivan within the next 2 weeks about all of the rains that happened in July. Just unfortunately, that doesn't extend to Plymouth. So,
Yeah, no
Yeah.
grafting.
Well, all we can do is try. I mean, and again, if either EDA or CDBG have money, one of the issues may be the process for soliciting competitive proposals. I talked to Donna briefly about it and said, there's no way we're gonna be able to advertise for 30 days and, jump through the typical competitive bidding process, but it may be 3 verbal quotes or something will work. So I'm not gonna worry about it until we find out if there's money to be had. I mean, it's a lot, but it's, it'll reach the point that if, we gotta fix it sooner than later. So, waiting 6 or 8 months to solve the problem.
Yeah, that's not gonna work.
Then it becomes a real disaster.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the larger slope failure too near the elementary school was included with the town's hazard mitigation plan as well, so the town is well aware of that.
Okay.
And it's from hearing from some of the folks in that group, it was a high priority.
Excellent.
And Jason and I went and walked that as well on the same day, and that will be a next concern.
Yeah, it's the...
Our water line is in there, right? Isn't that?
No, it's the same sewer line.
Oh, okay.
But the essentially the depression around that failure, the ground has dropped about 4 inches within 6 feet of the sewer manhole over there.
Yikes.
So
Okay.
it's only a matter of time as well for that one.
Okay. Great. Well, thanks, Mike.
Thank you again.
Yeah,
Next
Thank
time call with some good news, would you?
That's what he tells us to do.
Right, I was gonna say, aren't we always calling him with bad news? He's trying to fix it.
here to serve however I can.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Anything else?
What does that leave us with? Anything here? I think
Nothing.
we could be
We could be done?
no public comment, so I'm thinking we can say,
Superintendent's report?
Yeah. You got anything to say? It hasn't already been said?
Most of my stuff has already been said. Just a quick update on Kingsbury. We have moved to punch list items
That's awesome.
for Foster Street generator replacement and the Pump Station 1 project. And we are still awaiting the kiosk for the truck scale
yes.
at the treatment plant. And there's a few smaller items there to wrap up before we reach substantial completion. So we are making progress slowly but surely, and hopefully we can get over the hurdle within the next month.
Awesome.
That's
That is
reasonably
good.
positive. Thank you.
Yes.
Well, we could say at approximately 6:15.
15, we adjourn.
This meeting is adjourned.